My parents decided to sell off my $4,200 dream PC just so my sister could go on one of her luxury shopping binges, and after that, I packed up and left. What I did next? Well, let's just say it turned their world upside down in a way they never saw coming. I'm 24 now, and building PCs and gaming has been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. It's more than a pastime, it's something I've been deeply passionate about since I was a little kid. I spent years scraping together every dollar I could from part-time jobs, side hustles, and any birthday or holiday cash I managed to save. Every penny went into creating what I proudly called my dream rig, a custom-built setup I'd spent years assembling. And it wasn't only for gaming. I also used it for freelance graphic design work, which helped me earn extra income and sharpen skills that would pay off in the long run. But before I get deeper into this, let me tell you a bit about my family setup. My folks are the type who always think they know better, but their idea of what's best usually just means doing whatever makes my younger sister, Madison, happy. At 19, she acts like the sun rises and sets just for her. Madison is obsessed with all things designer, fancy clothes, pricey shoes, the newest trends. My parents go out of their way to cater to her every whim, even if it means pushing me aside. Growing up, it was always painfully obvious that she was the favorite. Whenever money was tight, guess who had to make the sacrifice? Me. My mom used to say things like, "You're the older one, you can handle disappointment," or "You're a boy, you don't need as much." So I just got used to being second place and figured I'd work hard to get the things I wanted myself. I never really blamed Madison for it. I just kept my head down, focused on my own stuff, and stayed out of the drama. A few months back, it was just a regular Saturday. I've been hanging out with my buddy Caleb. He's my ride or die and my main co-op partner. We were chatting about an upcoming gaming tournament we were hyped for, even tossing around game plans for how we'd crush the competition. I got back home later that afternoon, pumped to jump on my PC and get some practice in. But when I stepped into my room, I froze. My desk was completely bare. My computer, monitor, accessories, everything was gone. At first, I thought maybe we'd been robbed. But the rest of the house looked untouched. I rushed downstairs, heart racing, and found my parents just lounging in the living room, sipping coffee like it was any other day. I tried to keep it together. "Where's my computer?" I asked. Mom looked up, totally unfazed. "Oh, we sold it," she said like it was nothing. I blinked at her, convinced I'd heard wrong. "You what? You sold it? What do you mean you sold it?" Dad let out a sigh, clearly annoyed that I was upset. "Your sister needed some new clothes for a special event. We didn't have the cash, so we sold your PC. It was just collecting dust anyway." "Collecting dust?" I nearly shouted, my voice rising in disbelief. That setup wasn't just lying around. It took me years to build. And I use it for work too. "Watch your tone," my mom snapped. "We're your parents. We made a decision for the good of the family. Madison's event is important, and you can always build another computer." I was stunned. Build another one? Did they have any idea how much time, energy, and money had gone into that rig? And what about my freelance jobs? How was I supposed to deliver client work now? What kind of event even justifies this? I asked. Dad, doing his usual dismissive routine, just brushed me off. "Freelance work isn't a real job anyway. You spend more time gaming than working." They'd always said things like that, and I never let it bother me. Yeah, gaming was a big part of my life, but that computer wasn't just a toy, it was my livelihood, something I built from the ground up. The fact that they couldn't, or wouldn't, see, that was a total slap in the face. I stormed back upstairs, furious. I shot Caleb a message explaining everything. He was just as floored as I was. "Dude, that's insane. They didn't even ask first?" He texted. "Nope," I replied. "Sold the whole thing so Madison could play dress-up for her dumb event. She's such a brat. You should have hidden the PC," he wrote. Yeah, hindsight's a cruel teacher. But in that moment, all I could feel was this deep, gut-wrenching sense of betrayal. Years of effort, wiped out like it meant nothing. And nobody even cared. Later that night, I decided to confront Madison. I walked into her room and found her twirling in front of her mirror, checking herself out in one of her brand new dresses. "Do you even realize what Mom and Dad gave up so you could have all this crap?" I asked, leaning against her doorframe. She barely acknowledged me. "What are you talking about?" She mumbled, still admiring herself. "They sold my PC, Madison. My $4,200 setup gone, just so you could strut around in designer clothes." She gave a casual shrug. "So? It's just a computer. You can always build another one." Her complete lack of empathy was unreal. That just a computer took me years to earn and build. It's how I make money, for crying out loud. Not my issue, she said with a smug look. It's not like I made them sell it. She paused and her voice shifted slightly, a little more defensive. Besides, they're the ones who actually went through with it. I didn't make that call. Her words lit a fire in me. You mentioned it to them, didn't you? You knew they'd do this, and you just stood by and let it happen. She rolled her eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. Don't act like I control mom and dad. If they decided to get rid of your precious little PC, that's on them, not me. I just stood there, looking at her, totally stunned. I couldn't wrap my head around how cold she was being. Then she paused, looked me dead in the eye, and said, maybe if you weren't so wrapped up in your little gaming world, you'd actually get what matters in life. She kept going, saying something about how she had a reputation to keep up. Meanwhile, I was the loser who spent all day holed up in my room with video games. That was it. I walked away before I exploded and said something I couldn't take back. There was no point trying to reason with Madison. She didn't get it. She never had to earn anything in her life. Everything she wanted just magically appeared for her, thanks to mom and dad, who were always more than happy to play along. The atmosphere at home over the next few days? Thick with tension. My parents acted like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Madison strutted around the house like she was in a fashion show, rocking her new wardrobe like everything was perfectly normal. And every time I remembered how easily they decided to get rid of something that meant so much to me, it made my blood pressure spike. Caleb kept texting and calling, checking in to make sure I wasn't spiraling. You can't let them get away with this, man, he kept saying. You've got to stand up for yourself. And he wasn't wrong. That's where I'm at right now. His words have been bouncing around in my head nonstop. I know I can't just sit back and let them walk all over me like this. Still, a part of me wonders if I should just bite my tongue and let it slide. I honestly don't even know what's right anymore. Am I just being dramatic? Maybe I'm making this a bigger deal than it is. But deep down, I knew if I didn't take a stand now, they'd keep treating me like I didn't matter. Those days after the incident were some of the hardest I've ever dealt with. I could barely look at my mom and dad without feeling this white-hot rage boil up in me. And every time Madison breezed past me, showing off her latest high-end outfit, it felt like a slap in the face. I avoided them all as much as I could. I locked myself in my room with my old, beat-to-hell laptop, trying to limp through freelance jobs with a machine that felt like it belonged in a museum. Trying to run design software on that thing was like asking a microwave to roast a turkey. It was brutal. Deadlines became nightmares, and crashes happened every other hour. But through it all, Caleb was my rock. He kept me from going completely off the deep end. He'd hit me up randomly, sometimes just to talk about games or laugh about some dumb meme. He didn't always bring up the drama, which helped. One night, while I was unloading on him about how much everything sucked, he dropped this line. Jake, it's like they're treating you like a business transaction, but to you, it was personal. That's the problem. And that was exactly it. This wasn't just something I could shrug off like a bad deal. It was my own family showing me loud and clear where I ranked on their priority list. That realization hit hard. That night, I made up my mind. I couldn't let this slide. I needed to do something. Not just to try and get the computer back, but to make them understand they couldn't keep brushing me aside like I didn't matter. So, I started gathering everything I could to prove ownership of the PC. I dug up receipts for every single part one bought, found pictures from the day I built it, even pulled screenshots of my freelance income that showed just how vital that machine was to my work. I also tracked down the buyer who ended up with my PC. They were polite, even sympathetic, but they were clear, no refunds unless I paid the $1,500 they spent on it. That stung even more, knowing it had been sold for less than what it was worth, but still more than I originally thought. And now I'm here, seriously considering walking away from the whole thing. It feels like more trouble than it's worth, and honestly, the idea of having to sit through another argument with my parents makes me want to put my head through a wall. Am I just being too sensitive? Should I just suck it up and move on? Update 1. Terror. Hey folks. Just when I thought this whole mess couldn't get worse, it did. Like I said before, I've been torn between staying quiet or confronting my family head-on. But Caleb, wise beyond his years, reminded me, if you don't push back now, they'll never stop. They'll think they can just take from you whenever they feel like it. He nailed it. This was never just about the computer. It was about respect. So, I decided to confront them, face to face, during dinner. I figured it was the one time I'd have everyone in one room. I sat down at the table, heart pounding, watching as Madison scrolled through her phone without a care in the world. Mom was in the middle of some gossip story about our neighbors when I cut in. "I want the money back," I said, laying a folder of documents right in the middle of the table. Dad raised an eyebrow. "What money?" "The $1,500 you got for selling my PC," I answered, keeping my voice calm but firm. "That rig was built with my own savings. It legally belongs to me. You had no right to sell it." Mom let out this loud, exaggerated sigh like I was making a scene over nothing. "We've already gone over this," she said. "Your sister needed help, and we made a family decision." "No, you made a decision for the family, without me," I shot back. "You didn't ask. You didn't warn me. You just did it. That's theft. Plain and simple." Dad leaned back, his expression darkening. "Watch your mouth, boy. We're your parents. Everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof, so technically, that computer was ours." "That's not how this works," I said, keeping my voice level even though I was barely holding it together. I reached into my folder and pulled out one of the receipts, waving it in front of them. "This clearly shows I paid for every single part with my own money." I laid the receipt on the table, then handed over a copy of the sales slip. "And this here? That proves you sold it for $1,500. Mom gasped like I just said I was cutting ties forever. "How dare you accuse us of stealing? We did this to help Madison. She's your sister. Family means making sacrifices." "Funny," I shot back, "because I seem to be the only one doing any sacrificing around here. Madison gets whatever she wants handed to her, and I'm just expected to deal with it." "Not anymore," I added, jaw tight. "You're going to pay me back. If you don't, I'll take legal action." "You wouldn't dare," Mom hissed, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Watch me," I replied, locking eyes with her and not blinking once. That's when Madison finally decided to chime in. She looked up from her phone, rolled her eyes, and said, "Oh my God. Are you really threatening Mom and Dad over a computer? That's pathetic." "No," I told her, glaring. "What's pathetic is standing by while someone's hard work gets tossed aside like it doesn't matter. You knew what they were planning, and you said nothing." Madison shrugged, unbothered. "I didn't tell them what to do. I just mentioned your setup, that's all." "You knew exactly what would happen," I said, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. She scoffed and crossed her arms. "You're always whining about how overworked you are. I thought maybe you'd welcome a break." "A break?" I echoed, stunned. "You seriously think I wanted to lose the only thing I used to make a living?" She gave a smug little smile, totally unfazed. "Wow, you're really trying to twist this into being my fault. Aren't you always bragging about how independent you are? I figured helping out your family wouldn't be such a big deal." I clenched my fists under the table, doing everything I could not to snap. Helping out is one thing. Blowing $1,500 on luxury clothes you don't need? That's not helping, it's selfish. She rolled her eyes again. "Maybe you're just mad because I know how to get what I want and you don't. Don't take it out on me just because I'm better at it." I swear I came this close to losing it, but before I could say another word, Dad slammed his palm against the table so hard we all jumped. "Enough," he growled. "We'll pay you back. But don't expect any more from us after this. You're on your own." I let out a bitter laugh. "I've been on my own for a long time. The only difference now is I'm finally done letting you all take advantage of me." The next day, they handed me an envelope with $1,500 in cash. Their expressions were stiff and sour, like giving the money back had physically hurt them. I didn't say a word. I just took it. It didn't feel like a win, but it was something. I reached out to the person who had bought my PC, and luckily, they agreed to return it for the same amount they paid. Getting that rig back felt like reclaiming a piece of who I was. But even with it sitting on my desk again, humming softly like it used to, I knew things at home were never going to feel normal again. My parents weren't suddenly going to see me differently. Madison sure wasn't going to change. I needed to figure out what came next. I was seriously considering moving out. I just wasn't sure if that was a brave step forward or a giant mistake waiting to happen. Update 2. Hey again. After getting that money back and finally bringing my PC home, my mind started shifting toward the next big question. How the hell do I get out of this house? I knew moving out wasn't going to be a walk in the park. I didn't have a ton of savings, and let's be real, rent these days is no joke. But I had my freelance gigs, and I was more motivated than ever to make it work. First thing I did was call Caleb, my ride or die through this whole mess. If anyone could help me think straight, it was him. Dude, you've got to get out of there, Caleb said the second I told him what I was planning. You can crash at my place if things get rough. Thanks, man, I said. But I think I need my own space. I've been stuck under their thumb way too long. It's time. He was quiet for a second, then said, why don't you go all in on your freelance work? You're good at it, and you already have clients. There's a lot of demand out there. Then he added, and hey, you ever think about streaming again? He was right. I dabbled in streaming a while back, but life got in the way. Now that I had my setup again, and a fire lit under me, maybe it was time to give it another go. That night, I jumped online and started digging through apartment listings. My budget was tight, so I focused on modest studio spaces and shared rentals. After a few hours of scrolling, I came across this tiny studio just a few miles from home. It was nothing fancy, a small room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was within budget and not totally isolated. I called the landlord and set up a viewing for the next day. The second I stepped inside, it hit me just how real this was getting. The place was bare, yeah, but it had potential. And more importantly, it was mine. I signed the lease that same day. As soon as I walked out of that office with the keys in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. My next big hurdle was figuring out how to pack up my life without setting off alarms. I didn't want some dramatic, movie-style exit, but I also wasn't about to give my parents the chance to guilt me into staying. So I took the quiet route. Over the following week, I started moving things out little by little. A box here, a bag there. Each one went straight to Caleb's apartment, which became my unofficial storage locker until I could finally move into my new place. At the same time, I threw myself into freelance work and fired up my old streaming channel again. I updated my portfolio, reached out to former clients, and even put out feelers on social media and freelance boards. To my surprise, the gigs started rolling in faster than I expected. Within a few days, I had enough contracts lined up to cover my first month's rent. As moving day crept closer, I kept my distance from my family as much as possible. Madison, she didn't even notice. She was too wrapped up in posting selfies and flaunting her latest overpriced designer purse online. My parents, on the other hand, started picking up on the vibe. At dinner, they'd toss out random comments like, "You've been pretty quiet lately," or, "Let us know if you've got something big going on." I just shrugged them off, keeping my answers vague and my tone neutral. Still, I could feel their eyes on me, like they knew something was up but couldn't quite figure it out. 2 nights before I was set to leave, it all came to a head. I was in my room, organizing the last of my gear, when there was a knock at the door. "Can we talk?" my mom asked, already stepping inside like she owned the place. "I don't really have much to say to you," I muttered, not even looking up as I shuffled papers on my desk. "Just hear me out," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed like nothing had ever happened. She launched into a whole monologue, trying to smooth things over. "We didn't sell your computer to hurt you," she started. "Madison brought it up while we were talking about how to help her. She said you didn't use it much anymore and that it was worth a lot. So we figured it might be the right thing to do." I slowly turned to face her, jaw clenched. So this was all Madison's idea? She hesitated, clearly aware of how it sounded. "Not exactly," she said softly, "but she did mention it. And, well, she made a fair point. You've always been so independent. We thought you'd understand." My stomach turned. Madison had planted the idea, and my parents had followed her lead like they always did. "You thought I'd understand?" I said, my voice rising. "Understand that you sold the one thing I worked for, something that took me years, because Madison wanted new clothes? That's what you thought I'd be okay with?" Mom flinched slightly, but didn't say a word. Instead, she stood up and left the room like her half-hearted explanation had somehow fixed everything. That's who Madison is. She doesn't have to fight or beg for anything. She just drops subtle hints, plays the innocent card, and my parents do the rest. She plants the idea and lets them carry it out. Before I knew it, the morning of my move had arrived. I loaded the last box into the car and left a short note on the kitchen counter. No fireworks, no drama, just a few lines about how I needed space and time to focus on myself. I knew that if I tried to explain it face to face, they'd just try to guilt me into staying. Caleb met me at my new place and helped me haul everything inside. As soon as we set up my PC in the corner of my new room, something inside me shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. That night, I went live on my stream for the first time in what felt like forever. Hardly anyone tuned in, but I didn't care. I was finally in my own place, doing something I loved, on my terms. This is where things stand right now. I can't lie. I've got this weird, lingering feeling, like the calm before a storm. But I'm trying to stay focused and push through. If anything new happens, I'll post another update. Final update. Hey folks, just checking in with what's been going on since I made the move. I really thought that once I walked out of that house, the drama would die down. Turns out, I was wrong. The day after I moved in, I already had freelance work piling up and was mapping out my stream schedule. But even with all that going on, I couldn't shake this nagging question. Do they even care that I'm gone? Or are they just chalking it up to me being overdramatic again? I didn't need approval from them, not anymore. I let that go a long time ago. But still, some part of me wondered if my absence even registered. That question got answered by the afternoon. My phone rang. It was Mom. I didn't pick up. A minute later, her voicemail landed. You could have at least had the decency to tell us you were leaving, she said in that guilt-laced voice she's perfected. Your father and I are very disappointed. Family means sticking together, not running away. I deleted the message halfway through. I didn't need to hear the rest. Then came a missed call from Dad. I ignored that too. Right after that, the text started pouring in. Mom first. You've really hurt your mother. Then, we've always done what we thought was best for you. Dad followed with the classic. You're being irresponsible and reckless. I put my phone on silent and went back to work. I wasn't about to let their passive-aggressive guilt fest throw me off course. Later that night, just as I was setting up for another stream, a new message popped up, this time from Madison. You left? LOL. Guess you couldn't handle it. Anyway, Mom's losing her mind. Might want to call before she totally freaks. It was so perfectly Madison, mocking me while pretending she was doing me a favor. I didn't respond. I just launched my stream. And that stream? It was one of the best I've had in ages. A few regulars showed up, folks who were actually there for me. They hung out, asked questions, cracked jokes. It wasn't a massive crowd, but it was real. It was mine. These are people who show up because they like what I do, not because they're related to me or feel obligated. Just genuine folks who appreciate my work. And for now, that's more than enough. It felt like a breath of fresh air. The weeks that followed were a mix of forward momentum and leftover frustration. On the plus side, my freelance projects were picking up steam, and my streaming channel was starting to gain traction. But my parents? They wouldn't leave me alone. The texts kept rolling in, some laced with guilt, others just flat out angry. One day, Mom messaged me, "You've turned your back on your family." Then came the kicker. Madison's really upset too. Don't you care how your actions are affecting us? Madison. Upset. That was honestly laughable. She barely acknowledged I existed when I still lived at home, unless she needed something. And now I was supposed to believe she gave a damn. I didn't respond, but the messages still left a bitter taste in my mouth. A few nights later, Caleb came over to hang out. While we were gaming, he asked, "So, your folks chill out yet?" "Not even close," I said, shaking my head. They're still blowing up my phone like I owe them some kind of explanation. Same old guilt tactics. "You think they'll ever back off?" he asked. I let out a breath. Doubt it. But I'm not going back there. That place was toxic, man. They don't respect me, and honestly, I don't think they ever did. Caleb gave me that look he gets when he's about to drop some wisdom. Yeah, but have you actually told them that? That hit me. He had a point. I'd been ghosting them, ignoring the chaos, but I'd never actually said what needed to be said. I didn't want to, because deep down I knew it wouldn't change anything. But maybe I needed to get it off my chest for me. So the next morning, I finally sat down and typed out a message to my parents. I took my time, going over every word until it felt right. Then I hit send. I've made my decision, and I'm not coming back. This isn't about being selfish, it's about doing what I need to do for my own well-being. For years, I felt like my needs didn't matter. I can't live like that anymore. Whether you support this or not, I'm moving forward with my life. As soon as I sent it, I felt like I could finally exhale. I didn't expect a supportive reply, and of course, I didn't get one. Mom came back with a long, drawn-out message about how I was being ungrateful and how Madison had always needed more because she was fragile. Right after that, Dad chimed in with a classic, "You'll regret this someday." But I didn't feel angry, or even sad. I just felt done. Their words didn't carry the weight they used to. I didn't owe them anything, especially not after everything they'd taken from me. After that, I poured everything I had into work and streaming. Then one afternoon, while casually scrolling social media, I came across one of Madison's posts. It was a selfie, her holding some expensive purse with a caption like, "So blessed to have parents who always put what matters first." I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. Let her live in her little fantasy bubble. That world wasn't mine anymore. A few days later, I ran into a family friend at a coffee shop. "I heard you moved out," they said, giving me a raised eyebrow. "Your parents are really struggling. You know, they've been asking around for help." I furrowed my brow. Help? What kind of help? They've been spending a lot on Madison, stuff they really can't afford. I think they assumed you'd still be around to pitch in. I took a slow sip of my coffee. That's unfortunate. And I meant it. I wasn't being sarcastic. It was genuinely sad for them. But as for me, I was finally doing just fine on my own. That conversation stuck with me. Not because I enjoyed hearing that my parents were struggling, but because it validated everything I already knew deep down. They prioritized Madison's lifestyle over the actual well-being of the family for years, and now they were reaping what they sowed. Meanwhile, I was figuring out how to truly stand on my own 2 feet. And I wasn't about to let their past mistakes drag me back into the mess. Did the guilt trip stop? Of course not. Mom's messages started sounding more desperate. "We're falling apart here. You've left us to deal with all of this alone." Then came Dad's go-to-guilt grenade. A good son would step up and help his family in tough times. A good son? That was rich coming from someone who couldn't even recognize my effort, let alone respect it. Madison stayed quiet through all of this. Not a single message from her. I wasn't surprised. She was probably content letting Mom and Dad carry the emotional burden, assuming I'd eventually cave. Then one afternoon, Caleb dropped by again with a grin on his face like he was sitting on a secret. "Guess who I ran into at the store today?" he said, kicking off his shoes as he came inside. "Who?" I asked, already knowing this was about to be something ridiculous. "Your mom," Caleb said, chuckling. Caleb told me she cornered him near the frozen pizzas and launched into a full-blown rant about how I'd abandoned the family. She even threw in that I was hanging out with a bad influence, clearly pointing the finger at him. I rolled my eyes. Of course she did. "What did you say to her?" Caleb smirked. "I told her you're thriving, and maybe if your parents had shown you a little more respect, you wouldn't have felt the need to leave." Apparently, she didn't take that well. I laughed, but deep down, it stung a bit, not because of what she said. I'd long grown numb to her theatrics. It hurt because it was just another reminder that they never really understood me. They weren't sad I left. They were mad they'd lost control. A few days later, Mom sent a new text. It wasn't the usual emotional manipulation. This one was short and sweet. "Madison's birthday is coming up. We're having dinner. It would mean a lot to her if you came." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe it was a genuine peace offering. But I knew better. It wasn't about reconnecting. It was about keeping up appearances. Playing the role of the happy family for one night and pretending none of this ever happened. I showed Caleb the text. "Don't go, man," he said immediately. "It's just a trap to drag you back into their nonsense." "I know," I said with a sigh. "But if I don't show, they'll use it against me. Make it sound like I'm the villain again." "Dude," he said, leaning forward. "It doesn't matter what they say. You're not living for them anymore. You don't owe them anything." And he was right. Deep down, I already knew that. But saying no to family, even toxic family, is harder than most people realize. So, for the first time since moving out, I picked up the phone and called my mom. She answered almost immediately, her voice syrupy sweet. "Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you." "Hey, Mom," I said flatly. "I saw your text about Madison's birthday." "Yes, we're doing a nice dinner. Just family. Madison would love for you to be there." "I don't think I'll make it," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I've got a lot going on with work, and honestly, I don't think it would be healthy for me to show up." There was a pause, and then the guilt switch flipped. "You're really going to disappoint your sister like this? After everything we've done for you?" There it was, right on cue. "Mom," I said, trying not to raise my voice, "this has nothing to do with Madison. This is about the fact that every time I try to have a relationship with you guys, I'm the only one who ever puts in the effort. I'm not going to sit down for dinner and pretend everything's fine when it's not." She didn't take that well. "Fine," she snapped. "If you want to throw away your family, that's your decision. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost." And that was it, the moment I'd been waiting for without even realizing it. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I've spent my whole life trying to make you proud, trying to be enough. And no matter what I did, it was never good enough. So no, I'm not throwing away my family. I'm finally choosing me. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt like a weight I'd carried for years had finally been cut loose. After that, I blocked both of my parents' numbers. It wasn't an easy call, but it was necessary. The endless calls, the guilt-filled messages, it all had to stop so I could finally move forward. Madison never reached out. Not a word. And honestly, that made it easier. She probably figured Mom and Dad would wear me down eventually, but I was done playing that game. Without the family drama hanging over my head, I was finally able to focus on my work and my stream. One night, while I was live, someone in the chat asked me a simple question. What made you start streaming? I paused for a second. I hadn't really shared the personal side of my story with my viewers. But in that moment, I realized it didn't matter anymore. I started streaming because I love it, I said. But also, to prove to myself that I could create something on my own. That I didn't need anyone to validate it. I just needed to believe in it, and in myself. The chat lit up with messages. Respect. That's inspiring, dude. You've got this. It meant more than I expected. Not because they praised me, but because they saw me. Not as the black sheep of some broken family, but as someone who fought to reclaim his life. Months passed. The anger faded. I didn't want to reconnect with my family, but I also didn't feel the weight of it anymore. Cutting ties gave me the freedom to finally heal. I wasn't looking backward anymore. I was building something new on my terms. One afternoon, Caleb and I were hanging out, just gaming and joking around, when he looked over and asked, "You think they'll ever say sorry?" I shrugged. Maybe. Probably not. But honestly, I don't need them to. Because the truth is, I'm finally living the life I was supposed to. A life where my work is valued. Where my passions are taken seriously. Where I'm not made to feel small just for existing. And if you're reading this and going through something similar, hear this. You don't have to stay in a place where you're disrespected just because it's familiar. You deserve better. Walking away isn't weakness. It's choosing yourself, and that's the strongest thing you can do.